so that I remember what I'm talking about. So you don't actually have to pay attention um, to the screen if you don't want to. But also, I must admit that I have become very ingrained into the Apple ecosystem in the last half a decade or so. So I'm a bit unaware at times and a bit ignorant of what's happening with Android or Windows, depending on what operating system you're using, to be able to capture that information. And lastly, you need 24-bit recording is what's advised by my colleague. But anyway, my point being that all these three factors are are met by the native Merlin app. And if you directly press the sound recording button on your Merlin app, it will automatically record to these three settings, which is exactly what Macaulay Library looks for in its gold standard recordings. Um, on iOS, the other app I sometimes used to use earlier, I don't use it anymore because of Merlin, is Voice Recorder, which is quite good and gives you the ability to change all those settings to match the settings I mentioned earlier. And I know on Android, RecForge 2 used to be very popular, but I'm currently unaware of what other apps offer a similar system as RecForge. So if you have any other suggestions for any Android apps that allow you to record in Wave, allow you to have 48,000 um, hertz of sample rate and 24-bit recording or 32-bit recording, either which way or more. Basically, I'll be more than happy to take your suggestions and we can also show that to others in case you do not want to use Merlin. But if you're already using Merlin, stick with Merlin. That's the best way to go forward. Um, So I've already touched upon the first two settings. So these ones I've already touched upon. Um, but if you do insist on using something other than Merlin, the other things I would recommend that you change in that app. So most phones by default um, record in so there's mono and there's stereo, right? So stereo is where you have two separate um, speakers or two separate channels, left and right, which is very useful when you're doing something like Dolby surround sound and things like that. But for our purposes of recording a single bird sound, stereo sound is really not necessary. So a mono channel is what is recommended. So a single channel for that single source of sound that we are recording. And a lot of the apps tend to have automated level matching. So level matching is when you're really close to some bird and it starts singing really loudly. Um, Basically, the level at which the information is coming into the recorder may shoot too high and you may lose information. So sometimes the recorder will automatically lower the levels to allow for that information to not be lost. But we don't want that. We want that entire recording process, that information that we're capturing, to be as natural as possible. So we want those low volumes to be exactly where they are and high volumes to be exactly where they are, as opposed to being manipulated by the app directly. Similarly, some of the apps have automatic noise removal features, which is also something we don't want. In this case, some apps I know will introduce silence when there's nothing calling, artificial silence, or they might remove like the sound of traffic in the background or the sound of people in the background by another hum or by processing methods that actually again distort the target sound. So what we don't want basically are these two features, which is automatic level matching and noise removal features. And once again, Merlin doesn't have any of these two, but does have all these three inbuilt as a default setting. So that's another reason as to why I would stick wherever possible with Merlin compared to any other app. Um, I hope I'm making sense so far. Just let me know if there's any other question that keeps coming up. There's another app called Smart recorder. Okay, cool. So I'll add that anyway. What I'll do is I might share this later, oh, and so we'll know what that is also. There you go. Cool. Um, right. So with techniques, and I think again with phones, with good technique, that's probably what it takes to make the biggest difference between a good a good record, a good sound that's been recorded, versus something that sounds very average to our ears. And there's a number of things that you can do to make your bird sound recordings a lot better. The easiest, the most obvious thing is to get close to the bird. Um, the thing be, so the general rule of thumb that people follow is that the amount, the volume of the sound you capture pretty much doubles itself every time you get 10 meters closer to the bird. So even being able to get from, one side of the street to the other side of the street can make a big difference in terms of the amount of the clarity of the sound you're capturing. Of course, getting close to the bird is easier said than done. Normally, the bird knows exactly where you are, so don't just walk straight to the bird. Sometimes, sound recording, one of the things with recording sounds is that it can often be very time consuming, and a lot of the time is spent how do you, by just sort of very secretly going from bush to bush, zigzagging your way towards a bird. Maybe go behind the bird and then, act like you're not looking at it. We've all experienced sort of, when farmers are working on the farm, birds will be singing at their feet. But if you have a camera with you or something, the moment they see you, they fly away. So you just have to pretend, merge into the crowd a bit, and try and get close to the bird. But that is probably the single biggest way to improve your sound recordings is to actually get close to the bird. Um, Something that is obvious but also not terribly obvious is, very often people don't know where the mic on their phone actually is. So for example, most phones will have a, so on my phone, for example, there's a mic here and there's a speaker here. So just maybe at some point when you're at home, speak into both of them and figure out which one the mic actually is, and make sure that the mic is actually pointing towards the bird. And I'm sure there's other phones where mics might be at different places in the phone altogether. So you want to make sure that the part of your phone that you point at the bird. So for example, it's very natural to look at the, when I'm recording on Merlin, it's very natural for me to keep my phone how I would normally use it so I can see the spectrogram. But actually I have to hold it upside down to be able to record the bird. Um,
I think Ramit,
just
people couldn't see when you were showing your phone. Maybe you
Oh, is
can,
it?
yeah.
Maybe I'll lower my screen a bit. Sorry. Is that better? Can you see my phone now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. So in my case, just to give you an idea, so I'm running Merlin now. So my mics are here, so I have to hold it upside down to be able to record the call of a bird. While naturally I would normally hold my phone like this, for example. Um, But yeah, so figure out where the mic is on your phone, and whenever you're recording, just it becomes natural after a while. My hands now automatically switch my phone like this, and to record bird calls, right? Another big issue, especially in especially in India, often is just the amount of background noise. Overall, there's always traffic around you. There's always people, saying something or the other. Especially, when you're even when you're birding in big groups, which we often are. Um, like all of my family knows now when I do this, it means I'm recording a bird call, and they all have to not say a word for a while. But maybe especially with your friends and things, let them know that you're recording, so they all are quiet for a while. So that's one big thing. Just let people know that you're recording, and so they may not talk for a while. Sometimes I also, where it's inconvenient, like let's say I'm with friends who are not birders, I just walk away and get a recording. Your biggest tool here is actually your body, I find. So keep traffic behind you, keep people behind you. The sound of wind is pretty can be very bad when you're recording bird sounds. So I don't know if you have recorded on a windy day, but basically you get this very loud kind of thing on your phone or on your sound recording. And the best way to do that again is to, if you have a mic here and the wind is to keep the wind behind you and not have the wind coming straight into the mic. And sometimes, I can understand if the bird is calling from in front of me and the wind's coming on my face. You literally just have to go do a 180 degrees kind of like uh, thing. You have to go on the other side of the bird to be able to avoid the wind. Same with traffic, same with people sometimes. But um, again, that's the joy of sound recording. So being able to put the wind, traffic, people's noises, general environmental sounds and things behind you. um, Sometimes there's a crow nearby which might be much louder than the call you actually want to target, so you want to move away from the crow, all of those things. Just have to be mindful of those things and move away. I have seen some people, they also use like a little cone on their phones, like just make a little cone using paper or cardboard. Um, I've never tried that, but the people who use it, they swear by it, so it must work for them. So maybe that's something you can do. But I find the whole hassle of, it just becomes another thing that you have to carry and put on the phone every single time. The simpler it is, the more likely I am to record bird sounds using my phone. So I try to avoid all of that and just use my body to maneuver myself such that I don't have too much sound coming into too much noise coming into the sound recording. And lastly, and something I'm guilty of often, is so the thing that makes the most sound, especially when you're using your phone as your sound recorder, is your actual handling noise. Because the thing that is actually closest to your mic are your own hands, is your own breathing, your own clothes, like wearing louder clothes that when you rub, like when your hands rub against your body, they make a lot of sound. Or if you're standing on a surface like on sticks, which are cracking under your weight or something. Um, it's actually those things, being mindful of sort of the sound you make yourself. And those are often the loudest sounds on a recording. And so again, it's something which with practice you learn to sort of handle your phone as delicately as possible and just be very still, which it can be hard sometimes, especially in places where there's mosquitoes and things and all of that. But yeah, yeah. Or even, just being mindful of the fact that your movements are quiet as possible. But yeah, those, if you can sort of um, generally work your way around, bringing yourself close to the bird, knowing where the mic is on your phone, avoiding noise, and staying still. Those four things are the four main techniques involved. But yeah, again, happy to take more suggestions in case I miss something. But these are the four things I look at. Again, like I said, the more you do it, the more naturally it comes to you. I don't even think about these things now. Like my body and my posture automatically adjusts to those things. Um, um, the next thing I actually Macaulay advises, and I can sometimes be guilty of having no voice notes and sometimes a lot of voice notes. Is A, record the bird as long as possible and always add notes to it. So I've added the record the bird as long as possible as a secondary thought when I was making this little set of slides, which is again, sometimes sometimes you just get tired of recording a bird. Sometimes you're just recording an Ashuprenia that doesn't shut up for the longest time. It just keeps going on and on and on. And you've been recording it for 7, 8 minutes, and you're like, okay, now I think that's enough. And again, that is entirely your judgment call. I've often learned that sometimes I just keep the phone there and walk away if a bird is just singing for a long time and do something else to sort of move my body a bit so I don't get tired of just holding the phone in a single position. But recording the bird as long as possible allows you to capture things within or the complexities of the sounds or the change in song or odd calls made here and there. The chances of recording something that's novel and unique increases. Um, what I also often do is if the bird becomes quiet or if there is, sometimes I remember in Mysore some years ago, I was recording an Ashit Pinya singing on a wire, and there was somebody sweeping their veranda nearby, and every time they would come out, it would be such a loud sound. I use those moments actually to add my voice notes. So I will at that time when there's a lot of sound or there's some traffic, that's when I usually add my voice notes and I just say, oh, the bird has stopped, or I have stopped recording the bird right now, and this is an Ashit Pinya that's singing. It sang for like so and so minutes. It's calling with these notes. It's sitting on a wire. Add as many notes as you can to sort of give a visual of what you're actually recording. Um, and at least in my case, sometimes I can record, when I'm on a long trip somewhere, let's say for 2 or 3 days or longer. I may not always get the chance to put the recordings back onto my computer on the same day. And without those voice notes, I completely lose the context in which I was recording those sounds. So I highly, highly recommend adding notes to your calls. Sometimes record the call. More often than not, how it actually works is that you record the call, and at the end, when you're done recording, just sort of I'm gonna use the word vomit. Just vomit out as much information as you can into your recording, so that and you can always append that later or edit it later. But at the time, you just want to put in as much information as you can into your recording as a voice note, which may or may not be useful to others, but definitely will be useful to you and might be useful in the future to any researcher or somebody looking into those sound recordings. Um, mm, Ramesh has um, Ramesh has mentioned that he uses the gloves as a windshield, which is actually a very good idea. So you can use gloves as a windshield. I know people who actually also use socks as windshields, which is so I think basically we are referring to mic away from wind and things. Um, so yeah, using some form of cloth, it will again it might impact, and you can test this at home, maybe test it against a recording or test it against your own voice. It might impact the loudness of the sound that you're capturing. But definitely having some sort of cloth material on top of, especially natural cloth material fibers on top of your mic can help with reducing the impact of wind on your mic, on your sound recording. Right. Okay. So that's the end of this session. Essentially, we covered um, sorry, the apps to use. In this case, I highly, highly recommend Merlin. If for nothing else, simply because you don't have to do anything. It the app comes with all the settings that you need to record, and you just have to press a button to record, and that's it. Um, there's so we spoke about the apps. In case you're using a different app, we spoke about the settings to use. We spoke about the techniques, which is first and foremost the most important thing you need to work on to get good recordings. And we spoke about adding voice notes. Now that you've got your recordings, you've come back home from a trip. Um, our next step would be what you do with those sound recordings, right? Um, so my process. So I'm gonna again. So this is actually very specific to my process, and feel free to modify it, and feel free to share your own processes so that people who are listening to this may also look at what other people do, and if what works for somebody else for me might not work for you, but what works for someone else might work for you. So yeah, please do share. So the first thing I do with Apple. I can airdrop. I use the airdrop to transfer the files onto my computer, but you can always use a USB. You can use Bluetooth, whatever works for you. You, I'll actually show you what it looks like. So these are my sound recordings. So I normally put all my sound recordings from one day. So I'll use this as an example. I'll put all my sound recordings from one day into a folder. I normally label the folder, and I will be mentioning this again in this presentation. Um, so basically, in this in this section, we'll talk about, sorry about this, I jumped the gun. Um, we'll talk about importing those sounds. I'll talk about how to edit those sounds using a software. In this case, we'll focus specifically on Ocean Audio. This particular, it's a free software. It's really good and really powerful. And how to deal with voice notes, right? Okay, so importing the sounds. What I always do is the first thing I do is I'll put in all the sounds. Um, I use the folder. I use a date wise. I manage my files by date, but some people prefer doing it by location. So I normally put down, for example, this is 2nd October 2024, and the location I was at, in which case it's this place called the Coin. Um, and then I will put in all of the files in here. At this point, when all my original files are in this folder, I will also make a copy of them on a hard drive. So I usually always make sure I have two copies of every single file. Um, Sometimes when I'm being lazy, I do not do that. I will admit to it. And in which case, it'll be something like this, in which case I'll get all the files and I will make a separate copy and I'll edit. So I'll keep an original copy. And in this case, I've edited a different copy. So I have basically my point is that always keep the original file. No matter what happens, keep the original file, because once you edit it, if you might accidentally press save, you might do something that you don't want, or you might edit it wrongly. Um, Having the original, you might have accidentally even saved it in an MP3 format, for example. Keep the original because you might need it later. Um, Again, so yeah, so the idea is you keep the original, and I like sorting it by date and location. So mentioning both the location and the date in the file name means that when I'm uploading my sound recordings to Merlin later on, sorry, to eBird later on, um, it allows me to add to find the checklist I'm looking for. So I know that what I'm looking for is I want my checklist from the 2nd of October 2024 at the coin. And I can always go into my actual sound recording and be like, oh yeah, this is the one from 4:35 p.m. So the checklist that's associated with it is the one from that time, right? And again, this may not be useful if you're doing it on a day-to-day basis, but if you're coming back after a long trip and you're uploading your files, these things become more useful at that time. Um, Another question. So that's, do you name your files in certain formats after you record them? I'll come to that again. But yeah, I do. Okay. Sound editing software. So I'll speak mostly about Ocean Audio, which is this thing here. So you can download it um, from the website. I think it's literally just called. Ah, okay. Anyway, some I've obviously got a few questions about Ocean Audio. Oh, there you go. That's oceanaudio.com. But that's the logo you look for. You download that software. Once again, so Ocean Audio is a great free software to use. It is, again, I'll admit, not the software I generally use, but it is the one that comes recommended very often for people. I use a paid software, but it's within by itself. Ocean Audio has everything you need to be able to do anything you need to do with your sound recordings. Yeah. So I'll use this as an example. So this is Mixpre 6181. I can drag and drop my file here. By default, Ocean Audio, when I downloaded it a few days ago, it came in this format. So it showed me this is what is called the mm, the waveform. Um, you will be familiar with the spectrogram. This is what we see in on Merlin and on Macaulay Library. And the view I like best is this one, which is basically the waveform and the spectrogram view, right? And the advantage of that, um, I'll actually, yeah, I'll come to that anyway in a bit. Sorry. I've got too many windows open. Just a second. Sorry. Um, okay. There you go. So we're gonna use Ocean Audio. And essentially what you want is you want to trim in terms of editing, um, the sound, we do as little as possible. Again, the actual sound you record, the quality of that sound, you what we don't want is to try and fix the quality of that sound in post processing. That quality of that sound is a sound that you've recorded in the field. So that's why you really want to focus on your technique first and foremost. This technique is what is being used to make sure you get a good sound recording. Um, and what we will use Ocean Audio for, or any other editing software for, is essentially making sure that the sound is standardized and excess noise at either end of the recording, so that handling sound that we spoke of has been removed, right? And then preparing it such that, things like combining all of the sounds in one recording, which I'll come back to. So I'll give you an idea. So this is the sound um, from the field. Right, so that's the flame robin. I wish I could have used an Indian example. Sorry, um, but that's the one I will use for now. And what you want? Maybe I'll use a verse example. Actually, sorry about this. And I'll try and get an example of a recording that's not as nice. There you go. There's some handling noise here, and then there's the bird calling, right? And at the end,
Same,
oh,
same Robin, nice to chat. T Martin.
so those are my recording, my voice notes. So my voice note is basically in this case just what were the species calling. My bigger voice note was actually in the recording before this one. But so I mentioned that there's a flame robin calling, there's a load calling, and a white-fronted chat calling, and tree martin calling, I think. And so what I want to do, the first thing I want to do, um, when I have a recording like this, so I've got voice notes here. I've got the first song that's recorded is over here. I've got a lot
Uh,
of spring sound.
Sorry, Ramit.
Yeah.
I think we can't hear your recording.
Oh, you can't. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry about that.
yeah.
I don't know how
Can
to fix
you
that.
try playing again?
Um, Let me see if uh, okay. Um, I could, but I don't. So yeah, I don't know how that will work. Can you listen now?
No,
No, yeah. Okay.
no.
Okay. Okay.
I think maybe you
See,
may have to
Yep.
disconnect your headphones or something like that and play. I don't
Uh,
know.
I haven't got headphones on, so I'm
see,
not really sure.
Okay. Okay, never mind. But yeah, we can understand where the calls are and yeah.
Yeah, now?
No, we can't hear.
No. Oh wow. Okay. Um, does anybody have a suggestion? I'm happy in case somebody's faced
hi,
some.
hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
See, actually, we could hear your voice notes, but the calls are not there. Your voice notes is coming clear, but the calls is not coming. I don't know, maybe because of the sound is too low or something like that.
Oh no, no, that shouldn't be the case. I'll just try one last thing and see if that works. Uh, Audio settings. Yeah, no, I can't try anything. I can't see anything that's relevant. Sorry. So you can hear this part, is it? Hang on. Sorry.
That's going to chat. T. Martin.
Could you hear that?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
You can hear that, but you can't hear this?
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
wow. Oh, that's so strange. I don't know. Okay. So you can actually, so these are my voice notes are here, right? And you can tell by the length of this wave that my voice notes are actually lower in volume than the target bird in this case. But okay, either which way. So you can see the handling noise over here. So we don't want this handling noise. So I select the handling noise and I just delete it, right? Now the ideal, what you ideally want is 3 seconds. So this is the ideal world, and I can guarantee you almost always the ideal never happens, at least for me, right? Which is you want 3 seconds before the call starts and 3 seconds after the song ends of silence. Um, but I can just about make it 3 seconds in this case. So it's about 2.8 seconds that the first song starts. And here you can see so the seconds are here at the bottom, yeah, at the x-axis, and the y-axis, to give you an idea, this is the frequency at which the bird is calling on the y-axis in this one, and this is the decibels, so the volume at which the bird is calling on this waveform over here, right? And so what you want is 3 seconds before the first song starts, ideally, but don't worry about that too much. As long as you're able to remove the handling sound, it's fine. And after that, there's a amount of silence. So the bird has stopped calling. And usually after 3 seconds, so I've got 23 point something here. I'll just go for 23, 26 point something. What I do is I will remove this sound, but I don't want to remove my voice notes, right? So what I'll do is I'll simply take this bit here and I will use, I just see if where this is. Okay, so on Ocean Audio, there's an option called Generate Silence. So I want 1 second of silence between my calling, between the bird song and my voice notes, right? So that's your ideal practice as per my colleague and as to how they want you to upload it. Yeah. And so with this, you take this recording. So the next step, so that's trimming out my axis. So I've got handling noise at either end. That part is done. The next part is to normalize to -3 decibels, right?
Hi,
So
Ramit.
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Can we try something? You can go to your share screen and there should be an option called share sound.
Okay.
If-
Share. Brilliant. Okay. That should do it.
Yeah, we can just try that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it needs my password, which I don't remember. Okay, got it. I think that's
We allow.
let's see. Okay. Can you hear that?
No,
Or you couldn't hear that? Wait.
no, no.
Huh. Share sound. Mono. Share. Yeah, I'm not sure why. Sorry about this. Um, if you want to listen to this
Yeah,
recording, it's
it's
already up on,
fine.
yeah, yeah. If it's already up on eBird, so I can send a link afterwards so that you know what it was. But yeah. Um, so anyway, this is the call of the bird, and I want to normalize this now. So I normally, what I do is I just randomly click in this blank space here. I select all of this, um, go into effect. Is it effect? Amplitude and normalize. So normalize, what it does is, so the idea behind normalizing for Macaulay is, so they set a standard of normalizing to -3 decibels. The idea is that so every recording is of the same volume. And in that case, so what happens is when you have every recording at the same volume, you're able to judge the standard of recordings against each other, right? So, for example, um, I'll use my media in this case simply because it's all normalized already. So you can tell by how dark the recording is, how much background noise there is. Similarly, when it's not dark, it means that it's a clearer recording. But and these are all no matter what species it's calling, all of the recordings are of the same volume, and so you can actually compare each recording to the other recording. So this is particularly useful, for example, when you're trying to look for a species, a specific species. So you can tell between my common minor recordings, this one's probably the nicest. It has the cleanest background, and this one is probably the least nice. It has a darker background. Um, but and we'll touch upon this later. I use the terms nice recording and not nice recording. Look, all recordings by default are nice and are useful in their own records, because ultimately even the least clear recording is useful for training Merlin, which is the eventual aim over here, right? But for that standardization process, we normalize to -3 decibels. So we click apply, and you'll see that the volume will go up. So all of these recordings are now, so the highest volume is at -3 dB, which is this waveform over here. And for my voice note, if it's loud enough, I leave it as it is. The recommendation, however, and this is again up to you, um, the recommendation for voice note is -10 decibels. So -3 for bird sounds and -10 for voice notes afterwards. And so I've got my, where are we? Sorry. Um, so I'm on normalized to -3 decibels, combining all sounds in one recording. So the other thing Macaulay recommends is to, so you have the same bird calling. Um, you want to combine the sounds by the same birds into a single recording, as opposed to having separate recordings for every single, for each song that is sung by the same bird, right? So this flame robin is actually the same as this flame robin. So what I would do is I would take this, I would copy. So I've selected this entire song, I've copied it, and I what I'm expected to do basically is generate silence in the beginning of this song, add that silence, and then copy this song into the same file as well. So now you can see that all of this song is actually by the same bird. They're just different sections of the recording. But if you're recording a different individual, the recommendation is that you actually make a separate file altogether. I hope that makes sense. It's a bit complex. This bit can be a little bit complex, but either which way, the very simple idea is you want to keep the same individual that you're recording together, right? Um, you would keep the voice notes at the end anyway for all of these recordings, and usually, so for example, I can be a bit embarrassed about my voice being added as a voice note to my recording. So when you do listen to my recordings, you will notice that there are no voice notes. I transcribe all my voice notes. I will get back. I will get to that as well, which is completely okay. Um, to do as well. So I normally take my voice notes for myself, and later when I'm preparing all those sounds, I put down my voice notes into words and add them as comments in my actual media. When I use the manage media option on eBird, and I enter that into a text box over there. There are times, however, when my voice notes are too long to transcribe, and in which case I've left the voice notes as it is, so that whoever's listening to the sound can do with it whatever they want afterwards. Okay. So once I've combined all the sounds into one recording, oh yeah, there you go. Dealing with voice notes, so normalize to -10 decibels and leave at the end or transcribe, right? Um, and lastly, is saving your file, right? So you want to make sure again that the file that you are saving is separate to the original file. You want to basically again, um, however you do it, just make sure that the original file is preserved as it is. Just in case you make a mistake or in case you need the original file later on for whatever reason. Um, I make sure to add the date, the species, and the location to all my files. And my main tip over here is learning. I have never really found a use in my life for the American style of using the dates. So, 9/11 for September 11, for example. But one thing it is really good for is for automatically sorting by date. So instead of having our system, which is like this is 6th October 2024, or 5th, isn't it? There you go. 5th October 2024. What this will do is if you were to sort this on your computer, it will put all the 5th Octobers over multiple years together. But what I prefer, for example, is if I have 2024, so 4th October 2024 and 5th October 2024, if I was to put them down next to each other and sort them, then 4th October will come before 5th October in the American style of dates. So to give you an idea, that is how I do my sorting. And within the folder after that, so maybe this view is better. What I do is, I'll show you with this. So I will go on File. I'll say Save As. So I've combined two files over here. So in this case, what I would do is I will say mix pre 61. Oh, not letting me edit it. Sorry. Let's see if we can save a copy as instead. There we go. So what I would do is, so I've added, you will notice I've added 6181 and 6182 together. So I will make it 6181 underscore 6182. Again, you can use dash, you can use whatever you want. I prefer underscore, that's just me. Use whatever works for you. If a space works for you, that's also fine. So 6181, 6182. So I know which files are part of this. I'll say it's a flame robin. Then I normally put in 2024 1002. So 2nd October 2024. And I will add the location. So within my file name, and this is again, so you want to make sure it's in WAV format. Where am I storing it? I'm storing it in music. Within music, I'm going to store it in this folder and save. So the idea simply being that you don't have to change anything here.
Ramit, just a quick heads up. The time is up, so we may have to.
Hasten it a bit.
Yes,
Cool. Okay.
sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Right. So, and that would just save my file in a way that I can always find it later on. But that's the entire process, actually. And after this, what happens is you upload your file to eBird, and once your files are uploaded to eBird, which is I think Metal has a separate video, isn't it? That's what we mentioned earlier. Um, those files go into this thing called Merlin Vision, where you can see that there's a number of people who help out with annotating the sounds from India. Again, you can contact somebody at BirdCount India on how to be, if you want to help with being one of the annotators for these things. So to give an example of blue-throated flycatcher, um, there's test recordings and there's training recordings. So the system gets trained on certain recordings, and then once it's been trained, it gets tested against these recordings to see what kind of scores they get, right? So to give you an idea of what annotation looks like, I'll use an example that's already been done by somebody. So people basically look at all of these recordings on Macaulay and they will assign a little box around these sounds and assign it to a particular species. So you can see there's blue-throated flycatcher, there's songs assigned to rose-winged parakeets, lineated barbet, and also stalk-billed kingfisher, Tickle's blue flycatcher, and all of those things. And so when this is done, the idea is that the more recordings you have, the more annotations you have, the more data that the Merlin gets trained on, um, and hopefully gets better results presented to you when you use the Sound ID feature on Merlin. Does Is that pretty clear, Mithil? Do you think? I don't need to expand any
Yes,
further.
yes,
Yeah, yeah,
that's clear.
perfect. And do you want me to show Sound ID as well?
No, I think that's fine. We can,
That's fine, isn't it?
we are running out
Yeah,
of time. So if
yeah,
you
yeah.
are okay, we can take questions, a couple of
Yeah, absolutely.
questions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
let's do it.
maybe meanwhile Pratiksha looks at the questions. Pratiksha, I'm going to take up one or two questions from Zoom, which gives you time to just pick up a few questions and then you can ask to Ramit.
All right.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so one question is it recommended to add a high pass filter while processing the audio file? So I think
Um,
maybe we won't talk about high pass and low pass because which we haven't shown it here and then it might
yeah,
confuse people. So I would request
yeah,
Kavi that you can connect with Ramit separately and talk about the high pass filter and low pass filter.
yeah. Look,
Um,
I'll just quickly mention that Macaulay recommends, and so they do have a web page about this, uploading guidelines and things. They mention only in the worst case possible you use something like a high pass filter, but ideally without it is completely fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And his next question is, can shotgun microphones be connected to a phone and be used with Merlin? If yes, do they make a difference versus using the phone's inbuilt microphone? And any recommendations for shotgun mics for phones?
Good question. I used to use one for my phone and I've completely stopped using it because did it make a difference? It probably did make some sort of a difference, just not enough of a difference. And again, it becomes something else that you have to carry and attach to your phone. When you attach a shotgun mic to your phone, you can't actually put your phone into your pocket. So I don't know if it's worth the hassle, go for it. But I found that ultimately I wasn't getting enough good quality recordings to justify the yeah, just justify the hassle of it. Does
And
that
maybe, yeah.
Or a
And
recommendation would be there's something called a Rode video mic, which is the cheapest one that I could find. That's also really good if you want. Yeah.
yeah, maybe we can add these recommendations into the YouTube video.
Yeah, I'll put them down here if you want. That's fine. Yeah, anyway, but we'll continue on with
Yeah.
yeah.
Pratiksha, do you have a question from YouTube?
Yeah, there are several questions. I'll just ask a few.
Yeah, ask just one because that's how much time we have.
All right. So there's a message from Sharat Update. He's saying your waveform shows no background noise. How do you achieve this?
um I think honestly speaking, it's probably because I'm in Tasmania. My most of my Indian recordings tend to have a bit more background noise. But like I said, it's all technique. It's all technique ultimately. It's a lot of my I spend a lot of time recording. And the example I picked in particular over here, like I was placed perfectly behind a bush, sheltered from the wind, early in the morning, which is the best time to record, I find, because there's less traffic, less sound overall. I try to go alone, bird watching alone, but like I said, everybody who goes bird watching with me is usually aware that if I'm recording, I have a symbol to use to, let them know to be quiet or something, and vice versa. They ask me to be quiet as well. It's just technique ultimately. And I have good recordings, bad recordings with lots of sound and noise in the background. You get both sorts. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Ramit. Thank you all those joining on Zoom and YouTube. I'm sorry we are running out of time, so we won't be able to answer all your questions. But please ask your questions directly to Ramit on his email ID, and